How important is it to be able to shot shape and do different types of shot on the golf course for you? If you're an amateur, maybe not very. Maybe you just want to hit the ball straight and you'll worry about everything else later. But as you start to advance through your game, you realize how important it is to hit a high ball, a low ball, maybe a little bit of a draw, or maybe a little bit of a cut. Stay tuned to find out how. Welcome back to Maverick Golf. If it's your first time here, my name is Ryan. I'm a PGA golf professional, instructor, and owner of Maverick Performance Golf, where we take amateurs and try and get them to play the best golf they possibly can. But the most important thing is that we're going to try and teach them to have more fun with the game and enjoy their round of golf. So, like we said in the intro, 4 things that we like to really add. You know, do you ever get yourself in a position on a golf course where you have to maybe draw a ball around a tree, or maybe cut it around a tree? Or maybe there's a tree in front of you, you got to lift that ball up a little higher. And by the way, lift is the wrong term. Maybe you got to hit that ball higher and get it up over that tree. Or maybe you're in the trees and you need to get out, so you got to hit a lower shot. Or there's some wind and you have to kind of keep that ball to hold true in the wind. Well, today we're going to talk about the easiest ways how to do that. So let's start. There's 5 shot types. I try to put those 5 toolbox, or those 5 tools in everybody's toolbox to go play golf with. So we put those 5 shots in everybody's golf bag to go play with. Number 1 is the easiest of all of them, but it's also the most difficult in some ways, and that's just your standard shot. Every person's gonna have to have a standard shot. So if you're not to that point where you can reasonably consistently hit a reasonably straight ball, regardless of the yardage, then we need to work on that. That's our first and foremost thing. Check out some of our beginner golf series that we've done to help you hit that ball a little bit straighter. And most importantly, remember that these are generic large tips. If you really need to fine tune your body, because your body is a different swing than your buddies, than mine, than anybody else's, than Tiger Woods, than Jim Furyk, all of them. So make sure to go take a lesson from your local PGA professional, or shameless plug time. We do offer digital golf lessons. If you don't live here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, we'd be more than happy to help you with your golf game. But more than anything, if you want to get better, go see a professional and talk to them and explain what's going on so that they can help you get to play better golf and have more fun. So straight shot, we're not even gonna really talk about it. That's number 1. So that's, for me, that's just a straight ball that has a little teeny weeny bit of a draw. So the high shot, how do we hit that ball so that it goes up in the air a little bit more, right? So we're gonna get set up here. So a couple things you have to think about when you're trying to hit the ball high. So speed equals height, also creates more distance, and we need to add loft to the club, okay? So we're not really gonna mess with ball position just a whole lot here, but we are gonna talk about a few different things. So when we get set up, this is just a 7-iron, by the way, so we're gonna kind of use that for everything. 7-iron for me is just a hair in front of the center. But if normally when you would start, I'd have people with their hands low in front of the ball. If you're gonna hit it lower, we're gonna be way in front of the ball. So to hit the ball higher, I just want our hands more in line, okay? So we're gonna be a little bit more in line, and speed's kind of key here. So the more speed we get, the more spin we're gonna get, which is gonna cause that golf ball to go much, much higher. So in doing a lot of these things, you have to be careful, because you could have a tendency to miss-hit the shot because of the amount of speed that you're putting on. So remember, 100% of speed you're willing to put on it is what you're comfortable doing. If you have to overswing, your chances of a miss hit are much, much harder, or much, much higher. So you have to be really, really careful about that. So we've got that ball position maybe a little bit further up in our stance. Our hands are more in line with the golf ball, or even more in line with the head itself. And then we're gonna hit this a little harder, okay? So we're gonna try and move on this a little bit. You can see how high that ball flight was. And that's height. All right, let's talk about hitting the ball lower. Now, let's say we're in a little bit of wind, or maybe we need to flight the ball down for whatever reason. Just like in the high ball, speed matters here. So to hit the ball lower, in a nutshell, what we have to be able to do is our hands are gonna be out in front, and we actually gonna have to slow that swing down just a little bit. The slower the swing, the less chances we have of that golf ball skying on us, okay? And that's really it as far as the 2 basic concepts. So we're gonna talk about setup. We are gonna move the ball back in our stance just a touch. So remember, a 7-iron for me is just a hair in front. So I'm gonna move it to more about the middle of my stance. We're not talking drastic here. So move it to the middle of our stance. We're gonna take a more pronounced hands in front of the ball. That's gonna help us add loft. By moving our hands in front of the ball here, when we come back and deliver the ball, we're gonna be even more forward, which you can see what that's doing with the club head. That's gonna close it down a lot more. Now again, we talked about speed, right? So all those things are great, but if I try and turn on this and hit as hard as I can, what's gonna happen is that velocity is gonna force the golf ball higher up in the air. Again, we're not trying to hit low punch shots. This isn't that thing that's gonna go screaming 15 feet or 15 yards off the ground. This is just a more controlled ball flight that's gonna help us maybe hold the wind a little bit. Another big factor here is distance. Because we're slowing our swing down, because we're taking a few steps to hit this ball lower, you might have to club up a little bit. So let's say you hit your 7-iron 175 yards, you might lose 5, 10-ish yards. So it's really, really important that you remember that when you're doing your club selection. So you might have to club up to compensate to get to the green. All right, let's go through it and hit the shot. So again, my normal position is slightly in front. We're gonna move it back just a little bit. Hands are gonna be more forward. We're gonna remember a nice slow tempo and controlled swing on that follow through. And we're gonna hopefully have the much lower swing. Yep. There you go. A much lower ball flight, little left, but lower. All right, so we've talked about low balls, hitting into the wind. We've talked about high balls. Let's move on and talk about a cut. So to understand how a cut and a draw works, you have to understand what we call the basic ball flight principles. It's pretty simple. If your club face is open, the ball is going to go right. Your club face is closed, it's going to go left. If it's straight, it's going to go straight. Where it gets more complicated is when you start adding curvature into that shot, okay? So in other words, if I'm coming from out to in, that's going to put a clockwise spin on the golf ball. So when it gets up, it's going to want to curve to the right. Same thing in the hook. I'm going to come from more in to out. I'm going to put a counterclockwise spin on the ball, and it's going to want to move the ball more right to left. So now you start taking these things and combine. There's a TrackMan number that we don't talk a whole lot about. You know, when we're doing this, those basic ball flight laws talk about path and they talk about face angle. But what we're going to actually focus on is face to path. So that's what your relationship is of the face angle is to the actual path. So if let's say you're 3 degrees from out to in, right? But then you're 3 degrees open, the ball's going to go fairly straight. It might curve to the right a little bit, but it's going to stay a little bit similar because your face to path number would be 0 in that scenario. So let's talk a little bit about how we're going to achieve a little bit of a cut. So first and foremost, we're going to talk about setup. So this white stake here, this line is just our target line out there into the driving range. So right out of the gates, to achieve a cut, we know that we have to come in with the face angle slightly open on a path from out to in. So how do we achieve those things? Well, the starter, we're gonna, instead of taking a direct line, instead of taking a stance that is gonna promote a straight ball right at our target, what we're gonna do is we're actually gonna aim more left, okay? So we're gonna aim a little bit more left. Now, you remember, we have a target line here, and the club face is gonna aim a little left as well, but not as much left as our feet. So if I'm gonna put this in numerical terms, if I'm square here, and we'll call that 0, maybe I'm opening my feet by 10 degrees, okay? Well, I'm closing my feet by about 10 degrees. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm actually, when I say close my feet, I'm actually taking my entire stance, my whole body, and I'm closing it down. Now for the golf club, the face, I'm not gonna go the full 10 degrees. That's just gonna cause me to draw the ball potentially or hit it straight. So I'm gonna go maybe 3 degrees. So just a little left of target. So a lot left of target and a little left of target. Okay, now the other thing we have to remember, and there's different ways to achieve this, and I'm not going to dive too deeply into them because a lot of people have a lot of different feels, but when we come down, right, what we're trying to do is we're trying to get our hands outside and come across. A lot of amateurs do this accidentally, but now this is a controlled version of it. And that's the basics of how to hit a little cut. Let's see if we can pull one off here. So aim left to target. Club is a little left to target, but not as much as my stance and my body. And then we're going to bring that club from out to in on the downswing. And there it goes, little cut. Even got a club twirl in there. All right, we've got the high ball, we've got the low ball, we've got the cut. Hopefully we've got a straight ball in there somewhere too. Let's now talk about my personal favorite, the draw. So everybody seems to have a tendency to either draw the ball easier or cut the ball easier. It's more people cut the ball easier than they draw. So this is harder for most people, but for me, this is a lot easier. So just like when we're trying to cut the ball, stance, path, all those things matter, but it's in reverse for what we do the cut. So again, our target line is right here. So we're going to essentially set up a little bit right of target. So now we're going to be a little bit closed. And in doing that, same thing with the golf club, right? We're not going to go back to our same target. We're just going to push it and hit it straight. That's not what we want to do. So what we're going to do is when we set up to this ball, it's going to be a little right of target, but nowhere near as right target again. So again, I'll put that in numbers. Straight is 0. Our body's going to maybe 10 degrees right. And our club face is only going to go to about 2 or 3 degrees right. So it's still right, but a lot less of it. And again, the motion we're trying to make now is instead of coming this direction, like if we were going to try and hit a cut, we want to really pronounce that club down towards our body and come inside so that we push out. My warning is you could hit this ball fat. That's okay. We're going to practice this before we put it in play on the golf course. So let's go through it and see if we can pull off a draw. So again, I'm at a 0, so I'm going to go a little closed on the shoulders, a little closed on the feet, so stance is closed. Golf club is also closed, but not as much. And when I bring it down, I'm going to bring it way inside and push it out. Let's see if we can hit a little draw here. And there it goes. A little draw and another club twirl. All right, well there you have it. There is 5, really 4 types of shot shapes that'll help you play better golf. If you've enjoyed this information or you found it even remotely helpful, do me a favor, hit the like button. And if you'd like to see more, that subscribe button goes a long way to helping us. If you hit that notification bell, you'll be notified every time we come out with a new lesson or a club review or anything else. We're getting closer and closer to the season where we get to start reviewing clubs again. So I'm very, very excited about that. Do me one favor before you move on and start working on this. Practice this. Practice, practice, practice. This is not something you just want to go do and try on a golf course because you won't mess it up normally. So you want to practice this as much as you possibly can, build and develop that tool, and then add it to the toolbox out on the golf course and then implement it into play. Thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, make sure to get out there, play more golf, but most importantly, have fun. See you in the next one.